Well,
You might hear sawing, in which case I will close the door.
no, it's okay. Our neighbor across the street's having a whole bunch of landscaping done, so it's been, you know, builders and all kinds of things running around and doing stuff because, man, they work like demons. Get these giant jobs done in like one day. It's nuts.
Yep.
Anyway, happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
I'm not wearing a watch.
You aren't?
No!
She's
I'm
not.
embarrassed.
Were you wearing a watch yesterday?
Yeah.
What watch? Well, you know what? We'll show off what she was wearing yesterday. That's in, honesty, right? Okay. What?
No.
You're silly. This is a watch that I chose. I wish you'd wear it more.
Me?
You.
Oh, well, my issue is there's no
Here, why don't you get on this side?
date.
There's because that's right. You don't like no date watches.
Right. Well, I like them, but I like to know what the date is.
I understand.
But I really like that dial.
Yeah, it's
The
beautiful.
lighting is so weird.
No, it is. Hang on a second.
Hey, that's better.
Is it? Somewhat better? Too much?
Too much?
Like that?
No.
Like this?
So, this is the watch that I am currently wearing. Sorry about the bouncy.
I'm trying to stop it. There.
Anyway, Spencer made this for me. One of the first watches that he built me.
Yep, it's true.
I like how you can't really see it, but the dial is like speckled. I like that.
Yeah, the dial has this beautiful, like, tropicalization. It's a really beautiful watch. 1962.
It's very good at reflecting us.
It is. Oh, and it's automatic and hand winder. And that's the original correct solid link.
And it's really comfortable.
Yeah, these Omega bracelets, who's the best? The best. Okay, and I am wearing my 7549-7010 tuna. This is one of my super builds. This is one of my stealth supers. Because I built this watch completely out of parts. Like a case would come in at one time. Like a year later, I might find in the dial or somehow come across a rotating ring or whatever. And so over the course of probably about 4 or 5 years, so I was able to build this. But because I'm building it from parts and it's my watch, I was able to make it an automatic because the 6300 series automatics were the basis upon which the 754Xs were made. So 754X and 630X or 631X, they swap right back and forth. So this has one of my Super 6306 movements in it. Looks a lot better with the new crystal, I'll tell you that. And we're back. I actually don't know what she was wearing yesterday, so it's going to be kind of a surprise to me for the video that I absolutely already made. Any case, so if you're bored, check out that video I made last night. I'm thinking about making a short one that's just the actual, like the actual steps. I managed to make my changing a crystal video into this, like, 33-minute epic.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I take my time. Then I get distracted, and, and then I want to make sure I explain every single step as clearly as possible, including fixes for common pitfalls and stuff like that. Most people probably just want pictures. I know I do. Maybe I'll do that. Wouldn't that be nice? Any case, well, you know what? Let's do this thing. Wait, is this shirt?
I thought it was some kind of jasper.
Oh, yeah. Maybe it is some kind of jasper. I like these. They have a really nice feel to them. There aren't many pieces of these gravel that we get out of the back here that have this, like, beautifully pre-smoothed feel to them. Man, they're just lovely old thing. That's just a piece of gravel. Isn't that pretty? Okay, sorry.
So let's do this thing. Okay, the 62 MAS case type and why the Slim K615 is awesome. From Vilo1633. Question for you guys looking at casebacks. My 1967 6217 8001 62 MAS has a 7-digit serial number and a Suwa horseshoe caseback, and I've seen another exact month, June, year, identical looking watch with a 7-digit. I'm gonna have to close the door.
Are you?
Yeah.
Why? I can barely hear it.
That's because you don't have the best hearing.
Yeah, but that's a low tone. I can still hear low tones.
Okay.
Okay, so here's the...
I never finished reading it.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, so identical looking watch with a 7-digit serial number, but with a dolphin caseback. Wondering why.
Well, I actually talked about this in the Blue Crayons video by complete coincidence. So I guess I could actually put in a segment about that if I wanted to. Long story short, the 62 MAS is the... What? It's my personal theory. Well, no, because the microphone's on this side. You know,
Okay.
maybe it's further away. In any case, a lot of those early components... Okay, so this kind of ties in with my pet theory, which is that at that time, in the later 60s, 62 MAS, and a watch that I just did a review video on and is for sale on the website, the late 60s 6106 8100, which is the Blue Crayons. But like the 62 MAS, both of those models, they have green lume, which is a Daini thing. Suwa never did that. And the casebacks are what I see as the Daini style casebacks. Both of them are 7-digit serial numbers. So I think if you're seeing serial numbers 7 digits on both and the casebacks otherwise look similar, they just got designs, mixed up while they were changing from one to the other. I see a lot of different stuff coming out of the Daini plant, and it seemed like they changed how they were doing things more than once. I even have a Daini case from that time where the Daini logo is actually backwards.
It's kind of, I guess, weird that a Gene Kranz, you said? That, since it's a NASA program watch, I'm surprised that more people don't collect them, because everybody's like, oh my god, a Pogue! And granted, yes, that went to space, but the Apollo program was kind of a big deal.
It was. I mean, the Gene Kranz sort of had a following for a bit. Maybe they're doing better. I hope they are. They're super cool, but also new information that I've read suggests that those early sort of dress divers, like the Gene Kranz, those sport divers, that they were ordered specifically for special forces and behind the scenes people during Vietnam.
How waterproof were they originally?
I'm sorry, hang on a second. Here it is. The requisition order that I was told about is that they were bought specifically to be real dive watches.
Really?
Yeah, which is crazy, but like some of them survived the war and nothing. Just thinking about Gene Kranz. I don't know. More people need to read up on the Apollo program. He was the dude when you see like Apollo 13 or any of the stuff about the going to the moon or the space race. There he is. He's the guy that was played by Ed Harris. Real tight, clean, short sleeves or rolled up or something, flat top, and he wore a Seiko Gene Kranz.
All I remember from that movie is one of their wives accidentally dropped her wedding ring down the drain.
I think about that scene a lot.
That's why
actually.
I'm so afraid that my rings are gonna fall down the drain.
Anyway, they're cool because they come at one of those crossovers, those confluences of collecting. In this case, NASA, space race, Vietnam.
I mean, I know that we've had some NASA collectors, but I don't remember any of them buying one of these.
No, I don't either. And I don't remember seeing the blue dial ones very often at all.
No, when I looked up when they sold, there was only silver and like green.
Well, there might be. No, it's like the same as the 62 MAS, sort of that grayish color, the radial dials. So I think that's in fact the things like that gray brown, the silver, and then the blue. I really haven't seen too many of the blues.
I'm gonna just look it up.
Okay.
I swear to God, it was green.
You could be 100% right.
What is it again?
6106 8100. And by the way, it's while she's looking that up, the one that's for sale, it's also unusual. It's extremely late use of a Daini green lume dial with a Daini made case back. Because other examples of that literal exact same model followed the Suwa way, which is that they would have a blister back Suwa case back and regular Suwa lume. So
I can't open it on my freaking phone.
can't open what?
Look at it's green.
Whoops.
Yeah, exactly. It's the most expensive one.
That's okay. So she pulled up the auction. Sure enough, it's green. It's
$1,000.
and it sold for $1,000. So I just want to put in.
And this sold in March this year.
Right. So the important things about those pictures, that's crazy, really. I didn't know there was a green. But you'll notice, talking about Suwa versus Daini, that has the 6106 standard late 60s Suwa blister case back. But has the correct original Stellix bracelet on it. I don't know, man. That was a cool watch. I didn't know they made a green one.
Woo! I found something he didn't know.
Well, I know, actually, as you know, very not a ton about those particular sport divers. Oh, and in that picture, it's missing its rotating ring, missing its bezel.
Okay.
Okay.
And the person who questioned you answered, had another part of his question.
Okay.
Also, speaking of casebacks, my 1968 6105 8000 caseback has 7-digit serial number, and I've noticed others same year have 6-digit caseback. Weird, no? Anyway, that's my rant. Thanks, guys.
Again, I've seen a couple different things. Early 6105s. I mean, I've seen them if they're Japan X. I think if they're early Japan X, they can have 7 digits, but that's right when they were abandoning the old system for the 6-digit system they use now. So maybe that's another instance where Daini was helping out Suwa. Okay, thanks to Sabrina and her smart thinking brain. I went and I had an idea. I went and found pictures of a 7-digit and a 7-digit Daini and a 6-digit Suwa. And she suggested that I sort of chalk it out, that we talk it out, and maybe I can come up with a notion. We looked at the pictures side by side. I think I have it figured out. Suwa casebacks, and here's a picture. Looking at it, I figured out the difference. I put it into my head. The Suwa casebacks are stamped. So you have a single sheet of metal, basically, that is stamped in place on a die, is what we call it. You stamp it out, and then compressed and squished, and then spun out, like spun really high against a wheel, and that is what makes those slightly raised circular lines that sort of run out like that. But it's made out of a sheet of steel. The Daini ones are machined. It's a machined case back. They're heavier and they're more precise. That's the difference. I'd thought about that because you see the same thing in 62 MAS case backs as well. And more. I know there's more models. I just can't bring them up to mind, but that's the difference. Daini is machined. Suwa is stamped. He is here. Recently, I've been talking about case backs. A Daini case back, Daini made case back versus a Suwa made case back. And I kind of had it in my head that there was a difference, and I could tell there was a difference, but I hadn't really sat down and thought about it. Well, I have now. Okay, here's the difference. How you can tell a caseback is made by Daini or Suwa. And it's actually really, really simple. Here is, and I got these from the same era. Oops, forgot that's not on there. I got these, all these watches are from the same era. So this is one of Suwa's early sport divers. It's neat, yeah, 6106. So that's June 68. And you can see it's got the blister case back on there. This is stamped from a sheet of metal, and then this thing is squished into place, and it's stamped in place like so. So it's a much less expensive production method because it uses a lot less material and a lot less tooling to do. Oh, look at that. You can see 6106A, no, 6119A movement. Note the orange orange painted text, and the 2-screw first generation weight. That's pretty neat. So it boils down to this: stamped versus machined. So let's see them side by side. Again, this is stamped out of a single piece of metal and then spun up to speed, and it's rounded by wheels that are turning as it goes. And then you have this Daini made piece. It's machined out of a single piece of steel. The only reason this has rounded internal edges like this is because it has some wear. Let me look at this one, because this is another one. This is 62 MAS with that Daini case back. I need to clean this thing. And you can see the family similarity. Now let's look at the blue crayons. Okay, the thing with the... Got it. Cool.
Okay.
I got it.
We worked that out.
We did.
Okay. The video 6105 8000. Super nice restoration. Carol3231. What causes that haziness you find on the inside of the crystal in vintage watches? You can burn out parts just from setting the time.
Oh, that's two different questions. What is the haze on the underside of the crystal? If you get a little bit of moisture inside a watch, just a tiny, tiny bit, it can pick up stuff inside the watch, oils and things like that. It can transfer those to other surfaces. The underneath of the crystal is where condensation happens, because it's the furthest away from the wrist, and so it's going to be most subject to temperature differentials between the outside atmosphere and the inside atmosphere. So if you have moisture inside and condensation, it'll pull up to the underside of the crystal or the dial and the hands or something else like that, and it will when it dries, you'll have deposition of material, and there you are. That's usually what it is.
Okay, and the next part is you can burn out parts just from setting the time.
Okay, time setting. Well, yeah, you can wear it out. What that is time setting deals with the connection, the sliding friction connection between the center wheel, which is the heart of the movement, and the cannon pinion, which is the device by which the gearing, by which power from the center wheel is distributed on the other side of the main plate to the calendar stuff. Those two pieces are literally a friction fit, and they're supposed to be lubricated, and it should feel consistent when you're turning the crown. If it's not lubricated, yeah, you can wear those things out. If you're setting the time all the time over a good number of years, yeah, you can wear those parts out. It's pretty normal to have to tighten up a cannon pinion, which you just do. They're sort of, the way they work is they're just a tube, and then in the middle they get pinched. When they're made, they're pinched a little bit, and that pinch creates two ridges on the inside, which act as locking ridges and snaps onto the pinion of the center wheel. You can just pull it off and, crimp those down a little bit, and you're usually fine. But you got to keep that lubrication going. If it feels too stiff when you're setting the time, it needs to be cleaned or relubed. If it's wicked loose, like it's not even, the hands don't really hold, like when you're pushing in the button, that means your cannon pinion and or center wheel are both very loose.
Wasp just flew by.
Really?
Yes, it startled me. Mike D2662, Spencer, does any of that lume still glow for a short amount of time?
Yeah, this is a question on the 6105? Mm-hmm. Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. So weirdly, that early lume will glow, and it'll glow for a good while, couple of hours. I don't think it'll keep rolling all night long, but now that's the Suwa lume, the Suwa white lume. The Daini green lume, that stuff is, I don't know what it is. Like my 62 MAS, it has original lume, and that lume is damaged, and it will glow most of the night. It's crazy. That Daini green lume, so like the blue crayons that we have on the website, that Daini lume, it glows. Mm-hmm. It does.
Mm-hmm. Nick Kingsley spent. Oh wait, did I do that? Oop, my bad. Okay, Super Cruise. Hi Spencer, could you comment on the upper fourth wheel jewels you use for these 6105 movements? Are these custom made or is there a cross reference to another jewel used on another vintage Seiko movement? Okay, so that's first question.
Okay, well, let me answer that. They're really common jewels. Seiko used them in a whole bunch of watches. I could probably put in a picture of the exchange. I'll put in a picture from the exchange guide that'll show you all the models that that particular jewel goes to. So let me put in that picture. Okay. Here's our 1974 Seiko watch parts interchangeability list. So here we have the exchange for upper hole jewel for third wheel. 6106A, 6119A, 6119B, 6119C, 6138, 6138, 6138, 6138B, that's with 23rd jewel, 6139A, 21, 6139B. So I would assume that all of these swap. I've been looking for the exchange for 6309s. I have the 78, but I haven't really dug and found that. But there's your, I would say, general rule of the thumb is that these, darn it, that these, that is going to go for more than just these. But anyway, there you go.
Okay, so the next question. I am curious to know why you opted for a Type 3 low-profile crystal versus a Type 1. I thought most of the early Seiko divers would have come with a Type 1.
They would have, but not for long. My sort of the guy, my sort of mentor who got me into all of this, Jonathan Koch, he worked in a jewelry store at this time, and he was like their watch guy. But he said at that time when these watches were sold, yeah, they came with that Type 1 high top, and he said they were quote-unquote chip magnets, and that people were coming in a couple weeks with big chips off the side of it, and it cost Seiko a lot of money to do those, basically those warranty repairs. So they dropped the Type 1 really, really quickly, and went to the Type 2. So you see those a lot. For the Type 3, that was one of Seiko's standard service crystals. When Seiko went in and did a service, they didn't care if they were doing a high or middle or low top. And as we saw when we were measuring for Type 2s and Type 3s, the measurements were all over the place, all over the place. The 32...
I thought we only looked at Type 3s, not Type 2s.
It was a Type... Oh, because we were thinking about making the Type 3s, and we were trying to figure out the dimensions of an actual flat top Type 3. They dropped into like 5 different categories. The sides would always be the same. So they were always exact. That was always exact. But the height, the amount of dome, the slight angle of the bevel on the outside, you could see them and they'd be different. I think they just cranked them out and I don't know what they were thinking.
Okay.
But anyway, point being, any crystal is correct. The only time you're going to want to see a Type 1 is if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I've got this 6105 8000 from, April 1968. It's got the box and tags and everything. 100% original. You got to open it. That has to be a Type 1.
6117 6410 Navigator time restoration. When did you do that?
I don't know, a while ago. Wasn't that long. A couple weeks.
Really?
Maybe. I don't remember.
Daniel Dravitt. I have one in excellent condition, but there is one that bugs me. There is very little resistance for the inner bezel, and while it does not swing freely, it takes very little effort to move it. Is there a way to create more resistance for the inner bezel ring, making it just the tiniest bit more difficult to move?
Look at your crown gasket. If your crown gasket is beaten down or flattened, then it's not holding, or if it's incorrect. The correct D-profile crown gasket, good condition, will hold that crown pretty stiffly. Some rings turn more easily than the others, but Seiko really wanted that to turn freely because if it binds up at all, it'll start stripping out the teeth on the bottom of the city ring or whatever the heck it is, and then Seiko has yet another servicing charge they have to deal with, so they made them easy to turn. Check out your crown gasket.
The 7548-7000. Armin Martusian. I'm exactly regulating my quartz watch like so, but when I'm regulating my watches like 0.001 approximately 9.
That's really, really tight.
My watch is running menus. After lots of trying, I found my device correct point or number, which is between plus 33 to plus 37. So am I doing something wrong, or should I do what? I really don't know how to adjust my device.
Okay, so this is the thing with those. You got a quartz tester. That's the first thing. So I'm assuming you do, otherwise you wouldn't have those, those decimalizations. Sometimes, if you're doing a 7548 or something like that, those wheels, the fine adjusters, the trimmers, you'd be amazed how tight they are. Sometimes when I'm adjusting those, I've got to get a screwdriver that has a blade that's exactly the width of the slot. Normally you're supposed to have it a little smaller, but that one you need the leverage so that you can feel the tiniest of increments that you're turning. Like sometimes I turn that thing and I'm not really sure if I got it to move just enough, and I'll see a difference on the time grapher. So just move it without moving it. See what happens.
The 6139-8029 Rally Restoration Part 1. Bruce Barlow. One of these just sold on a local auction site. It would have been the Aussie version that you mentioned. It had a yellow second sweep and minute counter hands, but without the original bracelet. Sold New Zealand 305, US 188. Keep well from New Zealand.
Problem is the bracelets. Without the bracelets, it's this sort of, it's a typical case design for that time, the early 70s. Like the, gosh darn it, the glycine dress watch that we have for sale on the website, completely coincidentally, uses that same case style, but it has a different kind of bracelet, so the watch appears different. The Rally is really made by that big taper Stellux with the speed holes in it. It's just the way that it is. If it's not, doesn't have that bracelet, most people don't really look at them because that's the thing that makes them, really.
Audi guy. Hi Spencer, curious if you could show where the extra 4 jewels are on the 6139A JDM 21 versus import 17 jewel movements. I have a Notch Pogue 69, but I also have a few donor watches in case anything comes up when I service them. However, I noticed one of the parts watches I picked up has the 21 jewel movement.
Okay, sure. I'll be glad to talk about that. That's always fun. Okay, so 21 jewels versus 17 jewels. 21 jewels is typically for the Japan models, and it did have 4 extra jewels in the in the 6139A. Also, sometimes you see these 6139As came with lettering on the balance bridge and winding bridge that was infilled with red. It's sort of a neat little thing. I don't have an original case back for this watch, so that is why. Now, one of the extra jewels we can already see. It's right here. This is the winding bridge, what I call it. This is the upper jewel for the reduction wheel. There's a jewel there. Regular 6139s are not jeweled there. Standing in for our 17 jewel is my 6139 6005 True Pogue. And it has, yes, it has the later taper bracelet on it. It's a service bracelet. I gotta clean up that pip. Anyway, so the 17 jewel movement was the one that basically went everywhere. So the differences are, we've got, obviously we have the winding bridge, which I showed you. Here's another one. Okay, so first JDM difference, which, as I said, you can see right in there. That little red jewel right there. And here, there it is. There's that extra jewel. Okay, so the next thing, main plate. So that's one jewel. So we get up and there's the main plate. This is an original untaken apart JDM, and we know that because there's a die affix setting right here. So that adds a jewel because the regular one top of these things do not have that die affix. It is just an open jewel. Let's get these the same way. Yeah, it's just an open jewel with a hole. There's no die affix. So that's two. Third is the the center wheel cock. It has the lower jewel. Normally it would have a bushing here. This is, well, actually you can see it. You can see it here, can you not? Because it doesn't have its balance cock. His center bridge cock. So isn't that fun? So this actually goes right there, okay? And then the extra jewel here, normally that's a bushing. That is for the minute counter wheel pinion. It travels through here. So that, on the flip side, is you've got that baby's jeweled. And I think that's pretty neat. The last one, probably the most important, is this is our barrel and train bridge. And obviously there's only two jewels in here, and they're both right there. Normally they do not have that. They will have just a, gosh, I've got a million of these things and I didn't pull one out if I wasn't ready. Oh, is that one? Yeah, so you can see. There it is. You got a bushing there, not a jewel. There you go. There are your 4 jewels. The 4 jewel difference. Ooh, look what I just found in my stuff. Looking through all this crap. New old stock. JDM 21 jewel. So this is the later one that doesn't have the red infill, but there's that jewel, 21 jewels. That's cool. I have a lot of little random stuff like this, and it's just, I'm not organized enough to actually have a list of everything, but I find things sometimes. When I find things, I try to write notes on them. Anyway, there you go.
Okay, next question. CLO2715. Make me appreciate my watch even more after watching your video. I'm wearing my Seiko Rally tomorrow.
Yeah, you should. Everybody should. There is another model, 6106 from that exact same time that has another Stellux version, kind of that bracelet. But instead of having, the speed holes, it just has a slot offset on one side. I mean, if you, those are, I don't remember the number right at the top of my head though. It's kind of useless information. Point being, even with something that close as a replacement bracelet, it still doesn't look quite right. It's got to have the speed holes. Okay, so let's do it.
Ostrich 67. I have an identical one. It was my father's, and he bought it when I was about 6 years old in 1973, I think, at a duty-free store in Bermuda. I told him when he was planning his estate that his Seiko was really the only personal item I wanted him to leave me. He actually left me all of his watches, including the trapezoidal Gruen that he got for his 15th birthday and my grandfather's pocket watch. Oh, and his Mustang convertible. Thanks, Dad. Miss you.
Well, you know,
His dad had neat stuff, I guess.
yeah, his dad had neat stuff, and he kept his neat stuff. Good for you. That's great.
Dodgy Druid. Still yet to find one without pull my undies down price tags.
Yeah.
So I had to console myself this week with another grail for me, a 6309 large Seiko square with the brilliant case back spring removers on the case. Think the case was used again for later DXs.
Yeah, actually, I
What
have.
the heck is a DXs?
DX is one of those Seiko sub-brands. They're not really a sub-brand. I mean, it kind of is. DX is supposed to be like deluxe. 6106 had a ton of them. In reality, it didn't really mean a whole lot. Maybe for styling, you see it a whole lot. But it's like they had a whole nother line called SS, which was for second setting. But there's no difference between 6106 second setting and 6106 what?
I was like, why does DX make me think of wrestling? And that was the name of D Generation X. They were like,
Were they like a wrestling team?
yes.
Wow.
Anyway.
Wow. What was it? I've lost track of the
I don't
question.
know. I wasn't listening because I
No,
was...
no. What was the... Give me the original question again, if you don't mind.
He got a 6309 large Seiko square with...
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, at that time, Seiko was all about the square TV cases. They loved the square TV cases. In fact, I have one.
One?
No, well, I have one that's kind of special that I built. It was the last watch that I built out of a sample case.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, so I'll just show that off for a second.
I've owned a lot of TV dial watches over the years. I still have a good number. These are the only two that have really kind of, stayed with me for different reasons. This one I've had forever. I mean, right at the dawn of my even being interested in Seiko. That is the original bracelet. Please note it's a DX, which we do talk about. I don't know. There are a few models of this time you just don't see anymore. This is one of them. They also made, there's a 5600 version of this. Or is it a 5200? Or is it a 5100? I don't remember. But it's a Daini product. I serviced this, like 12 years ago. One of these days. This watch is cool because I originally got it with the original case and everything, and it was kind of beat up. And I came across this, which is a sample case, basically brand new. And so I took the original case and the kind of beat up bracelet here, and I moved the original dial and hands and movement and everything, and the case back onto this TV dial. The reason I was, kept this one, aside from the fact that it's actually pretty cool, is I'm kind of sentimental, and this has a nice dedication on the back. Let me see if I can read it here. I'm just kind of a, sentimentalist, and I like it in part, actually in large part, because of the case back. Like I said, I just thought it was sweet. 8/24/77, August 24th, 77, to Tom, Magic 25, love Mimi. 25 years together. She gave him a watch. And the nice thing is, you look at it, he wore it a lot. That's the other thing. I've got some dedicated watches that were obviously given by a woman to a man, where they did not, where it was clear that the gentleman did not wear the watch. That always makes me kind of go, eat. Anyway, their original case wasn't bad, but it's kind of beat up. That's the sample dial and hands in there. And you'll notice that unusually the sample case back is totally blank. Normally it would be a normal, regular case back with all the information, except it would have samples stamped across it. This is sterile. That's kind of neat, isn't it? In any case, there you go. My 2 TV dials.
Okay. For the bottle cap shroud option thingamabobber.
SUN 019, because they're gigantic watches. They're as big as an Easter ham.
Bin Nice Sony 2032 had this watch, and the depth of the dial with the 4 hands was something else. A very special design. Had to let it go. The watch was just so enormous and unwieldy. Hope to see this concept made. I agree with that. It's like, whoa, when you look at it.
Yeah, I was considering doing the math. I've always said that they were like 15% too large. And I'm like, well, you know what? Maybe I could do the math and figure out if I take 15% off of all the measurements, maybe it'll give me a number of what it should have been. Because I think the proportions are great. It's a beautiful watch. It even has Seiko's sort of magic proportion where the dial is fairly tight, a little tighter, and the bezel and everything around takes up more space, so it's more visible when you're using it. I'll stop this just in case I do that math. Okay.
That's it.
That's it? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I guess that's it. Gardening.
What? No.
No more gardening?
Well, I don't want to.
Is it going to rain?
It looks like it.
Well, you know what? We need the moisture. They razz me all the time about being a dad. All the time. So I was like, why not lean into it? It's the only thing I got. I mean, I can't produce any more, shenanigans and dangerous stupidity. So I guess that's what I'm going to have to accept as my outlet.
Okay.
Maybe that's why that happens. It's the only outlet that people have anymore.
What, like a dog food cookbook?
Oh, yeah. My dad was going to write a dog food cookbook.
But the thing is, back then there were none, so it was like, what? But now I'm sure there are many.
Dad got it into his head in the 70s that he needed to kind of be a prepper because he was worried about the Russians coming over the hill. Literally something that he said way more than once. Because my family escaped from the Russians up in Lithuania in, around 1900, because the Tsar, that was then the Russian Empire, and the Tsar was busy doing what the Tsars do, even to this day, forced conscription. So they were like, screw that, and they left. They bolted. But yeah, that's just wild. What was my point?
The point was your dad was a prepper and then the dog food cookbook.
Right. Okay. So here's the thing. Russians coming over the hill. Dad meant it. He was not that he was like, they might not literally come over the hill, but the Russians were a constant threat. You had to worry about the Russians. Thus, when the Russians came over the metaphorical hill, you better be ready. But for Dad, because he was kind of distractible, he kind of filled, there was sort of a Harry Potter style room under the stairs going down. And Dad filled it with like this like prepper crap, like giant tins of dehydrated whole eggs.
Yeah, and so he
Piccalilli, which is like a pickled condiment.
So that's from getting it in the 70s. The first time I came out here in 2008, the stuff. No, wait, 2007. It was still there.
And he had put it in there in the mid 70s. Canned flats after flats of wax beans, those yellow wax beans, green beans, but no canned peas. Dad hated canned peas. But yeah, so Dad was like, yeah, we're going to survive when the Russians come over the hill with this random freeze-dried whole eggs. I'm like,
Why?
Okay, where's the dog food cookbook come in?
Any case, so he was in this whole, like, we're going to rush and come over the hill, we got to survive. He's like, we have to be ready to use all of the resources at our disposal. And that included, he's like, you have to be ready, kids, you have to be tough. You have to be ready to serve. You have to survive, even if it means eating dog food. And all of us were like, oh, it's disgusting. He probably talked about it over the dinner table. Anyway, he then, because it was one of the few joys he got in life. Actually, Dad got lots of joy, but he loved bringing it up. So we'd all start bitching him. Oh, there's your blue jay. He just landed in that tree. Do you see him?
I see him. There he goes.
Oh, he's gone. And so he'd bring it up all the time just to mess with us, and he'd sit there smiling. Well, Cinder, I've got to get to work on my dog food cookbook. It was awesome. I mean, he enjoyed doing that.
And the thing is, so you want to hear where my brain is on that? I literally thought until right now that it was a cookbook for dog food. Not like I'm gonna make Rocket some like human food as dog food, not making
dog food into human food.
I didn't get it.
It's possibly actually started working on that book, but I'm not entirely sure. He talked about it for decades, and I'm sure there's something to it. He might have sketched an outline or two.
I can't believe I had it backwards because I love animals so much. I'm like, oh, that's so nice. The Russians are coming over the hill and he's busy sauteing something for Scotty.
My old dog is golden retriever. Dad was like, no, we've got a thing. And then in 1985, 86, 87, there was this made-for-television scary straight movie called The Day After. Nuclear attack.
Your dad didn't watch TV and he watched that?
Well, I mean, it was a big, big deal. That was a big, big deal. That was on national television. And at the time, we'd been terrified for decades, and it had been getting worse and worse through Reagan's 80s about a nuclear war. We were literally told, we thought the rockets were going to come. Like, people laugh about it. Do you want to play a game? War games, that kind of stuff. We were legitimately scared about it. And so that thing came out. It reflected the time, but we watch it, and Dad was there, and he looked at Mom and I were like, oh, I don't want to live through that. I'm gone. I hope I go first thing. Dad got really angry. You must survive. You must work to survive. Well, Dad, bombs never came. Currently, we're still alive. So.
And the only survivor is Destiny's Child. What?
Jason Robards was one of the stars of The Day After.
Who?
Jason Robards.
Who's that?
Kids today. Jesus. Okay, that's it, folks. Enough talk about the grim 1980s.
Okay, well, I think we're done.
I think we are done too. Folks, have a great weekend, and thanks once again for the handful of you that stuck through this whole thing. We're off. We're doing it. Bye. There's not much. There's certain things that, that when you need the thing, nothing else is going to hit right. And one of those things is hot dogs. Mm-hmm.